All right. We have Matt Vincent back in Austin, Texas. And the thing about Matt being in Texas, you have seen literally every evolution of our HQ, our footprint. I think you were one of the first people to actually train in our gym. Remember that old gym that was like 6,000 square feet?
Yeah. You guys had the big gym set up kind of at your first location before you had Old Glory Truck.
That's right.
And it was just you, Joe, and Preston.
Small time in it.
But small time in it's only relative because where we are now.
Yeah.
At that time, compared to running things out of your parents' basement in Philadelphia while you're in Korea, you're not small time in it then. You're only small time in it because you know where you are now.
I mean, at that point in my life, 2016, our first warehouse, I thought I was on top of the world.
Of course.
Dude, I remember like literally we had a car to drive from our house to our warehouse. And because the business started growing a little bit, we needed our first pallet jack because we couldn't move pallets with our hands anymore.
Right.
So I remember we go to Harbor Freight Supply Store and we buy this big pallet jack. It probably weighs like 200 pounds. And then we realize, holy shit, how do we get this in the car and take this back to the warehouse? But those were our problems then.
Those are problems.
And I think we both have seen each other grow over those past couple of years, like businesses, personal development, life. Trying to grow.
That's it, right? Like, I think that's a big part of it, man. I think growth really matters. For me, like that's the big focus. And the more that I can kind of recognize where it comes from, the better. And for me, it's always been from being uncomfortable. That's it for me, being uncomfortable to some extent, whether that's business stress, whether that's training, whether it's different mindset stuff. Like, to me, that's where you start creating adaptation. And so if that works for me in the gym, that I have to create stress to adapt to, why wouldn't I do that mentally? Why wouldn't I do that for the systems that I start putting in place, like my morning routine or any of these type of things? And so if I'm not willing to be uncomfortable for growth, I'm not going to have growth.
When do you think you started realizing that? Like, when did that click?
I think it clicked a long time ago, but it's like it continually really clicks and you're like, oh, now I get it. And then 6 months from then you're like, oh, now I get it.
It's funny because I used to say, this was years ago, I would say when I started getting comfortable, I would search for these moments of like pain and suffering a little bit. And when I said it back then, like 3-4 years ago, it meant something. But now that means like even more. There's like more perspective and depth and meaning to it, where it's not that I search for uncomfortable moments anymore or suffering. It's that I know I need it in order to keep driving forward.
Yeah. I compare it to travel. And since we've done so much of that, and that's still one of our focuses, being able to travel and go and do. And so I noticed like 8 weeks that I was laid up after a knee surgery. I don't have anything of significance to tell you that happened in those 8 weeks. They just gone from the memory. However, like being on that run for 20 miles in Bryce Canyon, or being on a trip like for 10 days in Iceland and doing new things and new experiences. And like, I don't exactly know where we're sleeping and we're driving a van around. And I pretty much know how to get from location to location. You're on all day. And so like, I have so much to tell you from these 10 days in Iceland because it's new experiences. I'm paying attention. I'm not in routine. I'm seeing new things. It's new senses and all that, versus 8 weeks of routine just disappear. And that's the only way I've currently figured out to slow time down, or at least my perception of it. And if I can slow down my perception of time, I believe your perception's reality. If you believe the world's really shitty, chances are your reality sucks. If you're pretty optimistic, you can find a different way to go. And so the better I can get at controlling my perception or my perspective on things, the better I can control my reality.
I was actually thinking about this quote that's kind of applicable to that, where if we look at life, like so many people, I'm at fault. I'm guilty of this from time to time as well. Grass is always greener.
Of course, right? It is.
Like grass is always greener. Truth is, it's not.
Never is.
It never is. But perspective is greener. Perspective is everything.
The only time in my life that I've ever felt truth to the grass is greener was whenever I was going through kind of the big transition at the end, I guess with divorce, moving, deciding this is the life I'm going for. No one agrees with that move. Like, why would you do that? Things are going well, blah, 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 blah. And they were, but they aren't what I wanted to do. And that's the only time that I'm really like, you were all wrong. This is better. My life now is better. I was right.
I mean, where we end up in life is, it's just like this sum of choices that we make over time. And I was thinking about this on this morning's run, actually, is people complain about where they're at in life or what they have. And at the end of the day, you can't blame anyone but yourself, because you made choices, whether good or bad or right or wrong, along the way that have led you right to where you are. And it's really easy to blame a situation we went through, a divorce,
or anything. The government, whatever it is.
But you chose certain things, and now you have to live with that. And going through like the changes you've had in your life the past couple of years, I'm sure when you were in your 20s, you had like this vision of where your life was going to be by the time you were 40 or 50. And you thought like, this is what it looks like. Maybe it's white picket fence and brick house and dogs running all over the place and owning a business. But things change, man.
Things change.
So let's take that road back a step. Like, let's go back to when you were an athlete. When you were an athlete competing in Highland Games, champion of Highland Games, what did life look like for you in the future?
Man, this is something I've been thinking a lot about lately and was writing on and it spoke to my group about. And it's proof that nothing's impossible. And I got enough rad people and resources around me that constantly prove nothing's impossible. I realize most people don't have that. They don't have that resource group to prove that firsthand, that they can see it. So like if I go back to that and talk to myself 10 years ago, right? So I'm 28, January of 28, being 28 years old. So it's 2012. I am starting my first season as a professional Highland Games athlete. I've written a book on training for the Highland Games, and I have talked about the idea of the hate. I've had a blog. I think I've got some YouTube videos at that point. Have not sold a shirt. Have not started Hate Brand. That's 2 years from now, from that point. And to be able to go back and tell that guy of like, hey man, would you like to know what your 2022 looks like? You're a liar.
It's impossible.
You're an absolute liar. So you're telling me you don't work for the company you work for. You have, a $1 million brand. You have 7 or 8 other streams of revenue. You're divorced. You're happily with another person in another state, living. You have a private gym and the podcast and all these things. And then like, oh, your travel this year, you're going to Patagonia, Alaska, Bali. And then I have a giant project I'm super fucking nervous about, which good, with Indian motorcycles. I got to do a trip last year with them, and it was awesome. It was a real game changer of an experience for
I remember
me.
seeing that on social media.
Dude, such an interesting game change of an experience being on a bike for that long, because it's like being in flow state for 10 hours because you're busy. It's like running or long cycling or any of that. The brain just has so much room to wander, but you can't really not pay attention. I can't look at my phone. I can't disconnect.
Does it have anything to do with the assless chaps?
I wish.
Did you wear assless chaps?
Not yet. I think all chaps are technically assless.
Yeah, I know, but I just like
There's just no pants under them.
I just like calling them assless chaps.
Yeah, it's a fucking great look. I probably should get some just for a vibe.
Nothing underneath, just the chaps.
Protects your legs, like if you're using a chainsaw. That's why you need them.
I love that.
And so, like having that, like we pitched a travel show to Indian, and they've greenlit it. So we've got 4 trips this year with 3 episodes a trip for Indian's YouTube channel, and I get to host it.
That's sweet.
And so, like, that's all prior, back to 2012. And me at 28, like, we haven't done a drifter lifter yet. I haven't done any of those things. And to explain that to me then, that you're 100% wrong. There's no way that that's my future. Yet here I am. So to predict what the next 10 years look like, no clue. I have no clue at this point. My only intention is I want to hook me up with as many opportunities and options as possible 5 or 10 years from now. That's my only goal forward. Is like, I want to be as prepared to help that guy out in 5 years as possible. He needs to be in better shape. He should probably be smarter. Should probably be better at talking. And so, like, get the reps.
For me, like, I know that a plan is necessary. However, I'm always ready to pivot. You got to be ready to pivot whenever you have to. And I don't know what the future holds. And that's why, like, go one more means so much to me, is that when I'm faced with adversity, I'm faced with speed bumps, you better be ready to pivot. Don't keep leaning into resistance, knowing that resistance is wrong. Maybe it's steering you in a different direction, and just go with that, your gut sometimes.
Dude, the resistance is critical.
Yeah.
Like, damn near, like, the resistance is the highlighted path. Like, that's the one you should just follow that. Brant and I talked about it. He was having anxiety and was feeling weird about creativity side of what he does. And I run through it too. And like, the thing that I will always bring up to myself to remind myself is like, everyone you know who's where you want to be figured this problem out. And if you want to be there, solve problems. That's what your job is. Your job is creative problem solving. That's it. And the more that I can creatively problem solve and give myself tools to do so, the better we'll continue forward.
I sometimes think of this. I have this vision of what this looks like to me, this resistance. If you imagine like a group of people, and this is kind of what leadership and innovation and thought leaders looks like to me. There's a group of people going through the woods, and they're on a path. And the path leads them in a direction they don't want to go. That's a path of least resistance. Mm-hmm. Most people, they're going to follow that path. There's no thought about it. It's like, they just stay on the path. That path might take you to like an ambush where you're about to get absolutely murked. And then there's one guy that stands up and says, I'm not going that path. I'm going to go through the woods right there. So he pulls out his machete and starts bushwhacking through the woods. And now everyone else is thinking, the fuck is this guy doing? And he's saying, this is where we need to go. This is where I'm going. That's the thought leader. That's like innovation. And I always think of that. Like, you don't always have to follow the path of least resistance. Sometimes you got to take that machete out and just hammer through it. And that's messy and it's muddy and it sucks. But on the other side, there's probably like an oasis where you're getting served a margarita and a cheeseburger from Hop Dotty.
Dude, I'm not totally anti-path of least resistance, because I'm so naturally inclined to be lazy. There's one of my favorite quotes of all time is this Anthony Bourdain quote where he says, my entire life is a series of strategies to outsmart the part of me that wants to lay on the couch and smoke weed all day. I'm just trying to trick that guy. And that's it for me. And so finding just those paths, and if it's path of least resistance for me, like, I have to institute that in training and like morning routine. So like having a spot that doesn't involve anyone else being involved, that I don't have to talk to another person. I don't have to answer. I don't have to drive too far to get to a gym. I'll talk myself out of shit. So I need to be in it before like my body has a real chance to be like, what are we doing? Why are we in the gym at 5 a.m. again? And it's like, oh, we're already on the treadmill. I guess we're here.
I'm the same way with my morning runs. Before I know it, I'm 3 miles into a run, and there's literally no thought about it anymore.
Nope.
It's all routine.
Autopilot.
It's all autopilot. Yep. My whole 11-mile run this morning was all autopilot. And now people ask me, like, how do you find the motivation and discipline to do it? I just do. Like, there's no negotiation with myself anymore.
That's one of those, same. That's it, right? It's one of two ways for me. It is either this is important or it isn't. That's the only two options it is for the things I want to accomplish. And if they're not important enough, that I'm going to go do it, because they don't matter to anyone else. So they either matter to you or they don't. And if they don't, find something that does and do it. But stop pretending you give a shit about this. or give a shit. Either one's acceptable, but don't ride that line in the middle of like, well, I'll try this week again to be consistent. Like, no, man, do it or don't.
Yeah.
No one cares but you.
There's no, just the empathy for like, oh, this is what you can do to be, you just got to decide. Just do it. And once you're consistent, that's my biggest thing. I am a consistent person and I show up. I don't always do everything right. I fail a lot, but I'm going to show up the next day and keep hammering away.
Yeah, I think one of the pitfalls most people run into is that standard life thing, right? Like that a lot of people don't wake up, and there is this path of my parents said, "Well, do this," and that's what gets us to happiness, stability, whatever it is. And it is we go through school, we get a job, we find a mate, we make babies, and then we're there. And the problem is a bunch of people wake up at 30 and go, how the fuck did I get here? And this is it. And then people are so scared to pivot because of this fallacy of time invested. But I've already put in 10 years to this. I can't start over.
Dude, that's the thing.
What are you talking about?
I hate hearing that.
Dude, the rearview mirror does not dictate where I'm headed. No fucking way.
It's like when people are miserable in a job. Like say someone's a doctor or a lawyer and they hate their job. It's like, why do you keep doing this? Oh, I've spent this much money and this much time. Yeah, but that doesn't affect the future. Yeah, like
you're dying, my friend. Do you not know that? Like
you are unhappy.
TikTok.